As many small businesses in the food industry, many vendors face different challenges every day. Now, they have even harder challenges after going through the COVID-19 pandemic and facing its consequences like inflation. This is Gaston, founder of Smorgasburg Miami, a venue for small vendors.
Most of the time those vendors would be popping up at breweries or in a backyard somewhere, and having a place that's this big that can sit this many people with a brand like Smorgasburg in Wynwood affords those vendors a lot more opportunity than maybe where they were at before.
Gaston started as a food vendor at Smorgasburg, New York, and he continues his journey, which has taken him to go through one of the many struggles that food vendors go through: inflation and its consequences.
Inflation affects everyone. It affects both consumers and businesses. It's just a bad economic ailment. But when you are talking about being a food vendor, and when you operate on very thin margins, which is what happens in food, it's a very low margin business, it's very difficult. When there are very sudden increases in prices, number one, it's hard for you to adjust, and those increases in prices start eating into your margins. And then number two, unfortunately, as a result of high inflation, you have to increase your food prices to make up for that. And then maybe the consumer doesn't want to pay for your product, or maybe can't afford it as much. And so you're also getting hurt on the sales part of it. So again, for all businesses, inflation is challenging. For a business that is very low margin, like the food industry, it's even more challenging because there's less room to play with.
Being a food provider is especially hard when you're just starting.
I mean, I think when you have a small footprint, it's a little bit more difficult to mobilize and get things done. You have to do a lot of it yourself. When you have a large facility with a lot of people, it's the economies of scale sort of play into things, and it's a little bit easier for you to figure things out. It really depends on the circumstance, but when you're a small vendor just starting out, everything's really on you, so that's a little bit harder for things.
But Gaston is not the only one going through this. This is Elliot, who brought Coney Island Joe's from Brooklyn to Miami. Coney Island Joe's was opened in 1952 by his uncle's friends, and he wanted to continue the tradition. But some recent challenges, such as traffic, have stood in his way.
We had a very big struggle for 4 years. They were widening State Road 7. The traffic was so bad, temporarily lost half my customers. They wouldn't drive through that mess.
Traffic has not been the only challenge for Elliot. His business has also been affected by shortages.
We had shortages of everything, especially paper goods. I couldn't get spoons, forks, or knives, plastic. I couldn't get straws. And if you found them, they were 4 or 5 times the price.
Many are aware of the shortages of products and their rising prices. But something not many people consider is getting help and the hiring processes.
Growing a small business is tough. Sometimes, you're too small to hire help. And then when you get busy, you can't find the help. Nobody wants to work. I know a lot of small businesses that are hurting because they can't find employees. And if they do get an employee, they don't do anything. Because they want their pay at the end of the week, but they don't want to work.
And even though the pandemic is well surpassed, many employees switched careers or simply didn't go back to work to the food industry. But this is only one of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The pandemic was brutal for small business. Small business really had no recourse.
Daniel Hicks is an economics professor at the University of Miami who has noticed how businesses were affected by COVID.
They had no way of responding to these lockdowns that essentially took their customer base away, and for long periods of time. So local business relies on local customers, people actually coming in to their place of business or who live locally. So those transactions were disrupted by the pandemic over a prolonged period of time. So you really just saw a lack of business generally, and people, small business operates on very low margins most of the time anyway. I mean, it's pretty, it's very close to the bone, so to speak, in terms of how much they make from their business. So any shock, external shock to that, can put them out of business.
And sometimes, something as simple as the weather can also affect these vendors.
The weather is a big factor, and also the season. It's not the same to work in the months where the weather is not so harsh in Miami versus August, September, where temperatures will rise above 100. And then with the stoves, if it's 100 outside, in our tent it's easily 110. So it depends also the season, but also on the weather of the day. When it rains, obviously less people will come out, and that affects us directly. And it's hard to predict because we can check the weather on Wednesday and Thursday and think it's going to be a good day, and then it turns out that Saturday morning is a different ballgame.
This is Ricardo, owner of Mao Bao. He has been in the food industry for 10 years, and now his business is also suffering from inflation and its consequences.
Eating out for some people is still considered a luxury. Obviously, it affects us because the price of the cost of the goods is higher. So at the end, our price have to reflect those expenses. We sell dumplings, Chinese dumplings, and we used to sell 5 dumplings for $10. And we were going to raise to sell the same 5 for $12 because everything is more expensive, beef, chicken, pork. But we decided to keep the same price, but to raise the number of dumplings per order. So instead of selling 5 for 10, we now sell 6 for 12, which one could say is the same thing, but in reality, it raises our revenue 20%, and it allows us to keep the margin for the cost. But also, depending on the season, sometimes like today we didn't bring lamb because the cost of lamb now is too high. So we hold that back. Depending on the season, we try to work with what's available.
There is no doubt that the struggles for small businesses in the food industry are making every step harder. But if there's one thing bigger than the struggles they face, it is the hope and desire of continue growing that they all have.
Hold on, because this will pass.
Okay.
This will pass. Hopefully, will be the inflation rate will start to come down next year. So I don't think we're going to see any softening this year. On the plus side, people are working. So small businesses should take some comfort in the fact that their customers are likely to continue to come in and continue to be there. That isn't likely to evaporate like it did under the pandemic. So that's the positive thing, is focus on your customers that you have.
People will always eat out. No matter what, people will always eat out. It's just a matter of you finding the right spot to cater to the right people.
We're recovering now. Business is pretty much back to normal, thank God. People are coming back. Things are all right.
I think the best thing you can do is really embrace the community that you have with people and do a lot of grassroots marketing, collaborations with different people to increase audiences that you can share with other brands, and to do as many positive events as you can to get your name out there and continue pushing and selling. And just keep working hard.